Okay, so here we are halfway through the 7:30 turn, and the Prussian assault has begun and doesn't look very pleasant. Not a big surprise. They moved up closer to the left flank where the Austrians are, and got a clear line of sight to see that there is no cav back there. That means I think it's 2 units, are here in the woods somewhere, so they had to be more careful towards refusing a flank there so that they don't get swamped. The main attack on the pinnacle, a couple of hexes got withdrawn from either due to artillery fire or the attack itself. There's only a couple of units that are up at the front there. That's about it. Other units came closer. This guy took some artillery hit. The Abatis rules that I was grousing about before, those that's a misreading by me. It's the shock value for cav. They don't get their shock pips if they attack through it, which is perfectly reasonable. They still have to attack through it. There was something kind of similar with the ditches. I believe they're not allowed to attack across the ditches in the previous scenario. I'm not positive. I may have misplayed that instead. Or I think they actually the way it's worded, they have to attack, but they don't exert a zone of control, so they don't have to be attacked. Which is actually how it should be, where they have to actually suffer the losses, but the defender doesn't. It still feels kind of funky. That's just a mechanism of this kind of system where there's no fire combat to be expressly handled. It's kind of odd when the infantry across the ditch can fire and take losses from cavalry that probably aren't armed with anything too heavy. Anyway, that's just something you face with this kind of system as opposed to a fire and movement system, and is usually worth it to the people who like these kind of systems. But we're definitely seeing the difficulty in hitting a heavily defended, entrenched position here. And I have very little hope that the Prussians are going to be able to do even, I don't know, anything valuable at all against this. But trudging through the woods to try to get some kind of advantage, the terrain isn't any better over here. It really isn't. Got some losses showing up on the track. That's about it. Beginning of the 8:30 turn, the only really, well, we saw some movement in the woods. The Russians sending 1 unit around here in column, kind of challenging the Prussians to try to attack it. If they do, there's more of a penalty for cav attacking in the woods than there is for, and this is indeed cav, than there is for being in column. And another unit similarly placed, which could be attacked, but positioning itself for an outflanking if the attack is made by the Prussians across the field. The biggest thing that happened probably was the Russian counterattack over here, which was not a good attack for them, but they survived and held the location and can still keep firing that cannon at range 1. So they're kind of getting a gain off of that, I guess. They also did some firing on the Prussian line. The Prussian artillery is essentially useless because of the defensive modifiers in place between the entrenchments and the hills. It cannot possibly damage the way it's set up. If I could get some more artillery on one particular side or the other, that would change things, but right now that's not the case. Morale-wise, I had a minor screw-up too, where I had the Russians in the wrong location to begin with. But yeah, the Russians got enough combat success that they got rid of the 1 loss they took, whereas the Prussians are still not looking tired enough. Oh yeah, okay. Alright, so, yeah, I forget about, you're sitting on top of a counter. So we'll continue the attack from the Prussian side. Partway through that 8:30 turn, over on the extreme right flank of the Prussian army, and its own little detachment world, they've embedded themselves into an attack position. It's going to force the Austrians to counterattack, so that's going to become more fluid and interesting because they're still there. And here on the main assault, again, the Prussians have established themselves. Seydlitz made a sweeping charge, saving this big stack with Frederick on it, essentially. He was able to crash through, capture some artillery, and then make a much less impressive, a much more reasonable attack on Saltykov's stack. Still don't know what the Russians are up to here in the woods. Gonna see the Cav there have taken up a kind of more defensive posture. The line's getting weak along here. A lot of Prussians dying on this assault, so from their point of view it had better work. Ooh, I haven't handled the combat values yet. I'll do that, but it looks like the Allies are gonna get their unit back that they lost in terms of morale. Alright. Start of the 9:30 turn. Turns out I kind of jumped the gun last time trying to settle up the combat success points. I got it correct this time, and we got anyway, we got the Prussian morale down to 29, and the Russians are up at 49. So the Prussian army is stumbling along, and not towards victory, it would seem. The Russians came out, captured some guns, which shows somewhere in here. There we go. And pretty much got victories over on the main side of the battle, even though they've got a couple of routed units charging around through the back of their lines. Over on this side, things didn't go quite as well for the Austrians, but still, they're engaged in a situation that they can't be unhappy about. So it's looking pretty grim for the Prussians at this point. They might want to consider pulling out of this battle. I'll look at the victory conditions, see what I can do, but because certainly if it's not going to get much worse than this, I'd rather let it continue. You're seeing the Russian line faltering under this pretty massive attack. It's hard to tell which way it's going. Counterattack against that unit that came charging out. That certainly was effective, and that's the one route down here. But these other routed units are from the full-on frontal hitting Saltykov's line. Actually, his best general, focus, Rumeniev, was wounded in that attack. But on the other hand, this empty hex here was occupied by the Prussians, and they were forced to retreat, I believe due to artillery fire. So it's kind of a mixed bag. It's swinging both ways. Meanwhile, down here, I'd say the Prussians are not getting the best out of it, although they are gaining some ground. So we'll see what happens.